Hi, everyone. I'm Joshua Jahani. Welcome to our podcast, The Technical Founder, Advanced Concepts in M&A and Investment Banking. I am joined here by our co-host, Ricardo Oberlander. Ricardo, how are you doing today?
Even better now.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Today, we're talking about communication with customers and suppliers. And this one is very sensitive. I think out of all the episodes in this power alignment and communication series, this concept of communicating with customers and suppliers is the one that's most important to get right the first time. With board communication, you have a lot of opportunities to talk to your board. And just because one meeting doesn't go very well doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship with the board is in trouble. But you don't want to have super negative meetings with customers, suppliers, or regulators, which was the subject of the prior episode. So, with that in mind, that the number of mulligans, to use a golf term here, are limited, Ricardo, how do you recommend technical founders approach these conversations with customers and suppliers? What state of mind do you recommend them approach them with?
First of all, think in their shoes and try to see the deal from their perspective, because that's the moment where the transaction becomes very practical. Customers and suppliers are not usually thinking about the legal structure of a transaction. They are asking much more direct, mundane, but yet very important questions, such as: will service continue? Will pricing change? Will contracts be respected? Will quality remain stable? Will the people I trust still be there? If those questions are not answered well, uncertainty can turn into a big commercial risk.
One of the things we advise our clients on a lot is wait till the very end, the very, very end. These really need to be kind of like the last things that are done before signing the agreement. Buyers often want to have these conversations earlier, but it would be a mistake for a sell side advisor to let that happen. You need to have these conversations once deal certainty is achieved, as much as can be prior to the money being wired. And so we advise them to, have the purchase agreement finalized, have all the wiring instructions finalized, any kind of tax advice out of the way before they initiate these conversations. Small customers in general, to your point, Ricardo, they don't really care. They care about whether or not perhaps the buyer is a competitor in a competitive space, maybe is serving a competitive customer right now. That's one major factor that the customers care about. And then suppliers, they're mostly focused on continuity, and they want to make sure that they're not engaging in any kind of conflict once the transaction goes through. Small customers generally don't care, but they might if some of these conflicts are present. And large customers really don't care at all. We see sellers pontificate and cogitate and overthink these items often, and with a fair level of anxiety about how these conversations are going to go. They are meaningful conversations, but at the end of the day, customers really don't care, particularly the large ones. They're very used to this. It's a typical part of their business that they've gotten used to, as long as those principles are followed that Ricardo's talked about. Ricardo, as we look at takeaways and we consider the major lessons that you've developed by doing these kinds of transactions for many years, what are the most important maxims that founders should have in their mind when approaching these conversations with customers and suppliers?
I think the point about customers and suppliers is about understanding they care about continuity. They want to know whether relationship, service, quality, obligations will remain stable. They want to understand whether supply chain will be disrupted or will be kept pretty much under the same terms. They don't want to understand actually that pricing, for instance, will not change dramatically. The second point is about communication. It must be segmented, to your point. Strategic customers, at-risk accounts, and critical suppliers require different levels of attention, more detailed information, more meetings, better explanations. No disregard whatsoever for the smaller accounts, but you have to segment the level of attention, even the level of explanation, the level of information they require. And the third point is about people. The messenger matters. Trust is often personal, it's not institutional. It doesn't matter who's making the deal. At the end of the day, there's Joe who attends account X, and Joe is the company. In M&A, customer and supplier confidence is not just communication, it is value protection for the deal.
I think that point about the humans that are involved is very important. At the end of the day, most of these customer communications are done between people who have jobs. And so the overarching liquidity factors of a transaction, or maybe some of the major motivations for a transaction, don't really affect them. And we talked a lot about that in our fifth episode regarding key executives in management. They want to make sure that business as usual is maintained and that there's a commitment to getting that done. Uh, Ricardo, anything else that you think our audience needs to know before we leave them and head into our final episode about controlling the narrative?
It's to understand that actually that these two stakeholders, customers and suppliers, they can make or break the company because they're, at the end of the day, the company is heavily reliant on both sides. So it doesn't matter how smart the deal was structured. It doesn't matter how diligent, I mean, both sides were throughout the process. It doesn't matter the quality of the investment bank. If you don't convey, I mean, confidence, enough information, stability, trust of these two stakeholders. And I would add the previous one that we commented on before, employees, you definitely can put everything at risk. Or on the other side, if you do it very well, you can actually leverage and get even better results at the outcome of the deal.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to our podcast, The Technical Founder, Advanced Concepts in M&A and Investment Banking. We will see you on our next and final episode in the Power Alignment and Communication series when we talk about controlling the narrative. Have a great day.